Hi everyone, good evening and welcome back to the weekly armchair kickoff. Today we are on our United show, Keane On United, and today I am joined by Callum McFadden, podcast regular from Football CFB. And Callum, how are you today?
Not bad at all, Keane. How are you? Just strange that the season is over, but it's beginning already as of Wednesday.
Absolutely, we have a lot to look forward to with the Festival of Football coming up. I suppose myself, I'm kind of glad in the way this kind of, roller coaster season is over. A lot of kind of ups and downs, which we'll kind of delve into in further detail. I suppose, look, today is our Manchester United season review. This year has been a year of a lot of ups and downs. It's been an absolute roller coaster of a season. I suppose, Callum, I'm going to get to it from the start. Last summer, we had a lot of transitional period. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer got the permanent job last March on the back of very great results. United's board gave him the trust to take over the job, and we didn't go in and get Maurizio Pochettino. And kind of reflecting on it, we had a lot of outgoings, we had a good few incomings, and it seemed like we were kind of looking for more of a long-term kind of vision, a long-term plan, rather than the kind of short-termism we had under managers like David Moyes, Louis van Gaal and Jose Mourinho. Albeit all good managers in their own right, but it looks like they're all kind of opposite philosophies to what Manchester United believe in. How do you feel about the kind of, the outgoings last summer in terms of Alexis Sanchez going out on loan, and Chris Smalling, Romelu Lukaku going out? How do you feel in terms of that? Because obviously in terms of the striking positions, we didn't kind of make that many signings, and we kind of weren't looking like that we were putting a lot of trust into kind of like some Mason Greenwood and Anthony Martial and Marcus Rashford. How do you feel at that point in the summer? Do you have kind of high hopes for the season?
It was a strange summer in many ways. I think when Aaron Wan-Bissaka was completed quite quickly, and I thought, right, brilliant, that's a good start. Dan James came in, I thought, for the price, £15 million or thereabouts. I thought, again, really good signing. But as the Maguire situation dragged on and the Lukaku situation dragged on, is he going to go, is he not? I did start to get a bit nervous because Ole had made a lot of noise about the culture of the club and having to return it to what he calls the Manchester United culture. And Lukaku was someone who, it was clear he wanted out, but for whatever reason it just stalled. But when you got Lukaku out and when you analyse it, getting Smalling leaving the club, Sanchez leaving the club, Lukaku going as well, I look at that, Rojo as well, I look at that and I think he definitely cleared the decks to an extent from what he wanted to do. And I think that was definitely a positive. Now, in terms of the incomings, Maguire eventually comes in, which was a good signing. United needed a centre-back. I think the incomings were good, but I don't think they went far enough, as I'm sure we'll talk about the first half of the season, because Paul Pogba, going into last season, if he was fully fit, brilliant, it'd be very exciting. But there was speculation around his future. He made it pretty clear he fancied a new challenge, and then he was unfit when the season starts, getting a few injuries, and United just did not have creativity to break teams down when they played a low block. You look at that Chelsea game to open the season, 4-0, very good performance in the sense that on the counter, United looked devastating. But then you analyse the games that come after that, Southampton, Wolves, and they just didn't have enough to break these teams down, which was a worry. So if I was to sum up how I felt last summer, I would say 40% happy, but 60% of me going, I don't think we've done enough, because although the three incomings were really positive in my eyes, I just felt the club was crying out for another creative midfielder. Fernandes, as we all know, eventually comes to the club, but he was linked with United that whole summer, and United kept briefing to the media, no, we're not interested. How dare you say we're interested, which was very strange considering how it all turned out.
I remember then, even before last summer, things like last April, last March, I was told that United were in for Bruno Fernandes, so I've heard from credible sources and what I talked about football, and I was very excited. Though he's a very progressive. We'll talk about Bruno kind of further on in the podcast, but I thought lovely. We'd have him in, might be a replacement for Pogba, because we both know there's a lot of speculation around Paul Pogba at that time. He did kind of say in an interview he fancies a challenge, and look at the end of last season, though he got abused at the last game of the season. Do you remember that video that kind of surfaced on social media? Only a select few fans, let's be clear, it wasn't the Manchester United fan base that was kind of turned against Paul Pogba, but there was a select few fans in the Stretford End at the end of the season when arguably the day Ander Herrera left for bags of cash. Paul Pogba was the one being abused, and he was probably our best player last season. I thought that was a bit uncalled for, and I suppose at the time, kind of reflecting, I probably don't blame him for coming out with the fancying a new challenge at that time because of the carry on of them United fans that day in the stadium, and I probably left a sour taste in Paul Pogba's mouth. I suppose getting to kind of the start of the season, I kind of look at the forward situation. Like, look, I watched Mason Greenwood kind of come up when he was playing the 17s, 19s, and the under 23s, and a fantastic striker. And look, he did make it like a few appearances on the tail end of last season, and he was a very good player. He's a fantastic player, but I never could have imagined that he would be replacing Romelu Lukaku at 18 years of age. Like, it's a very big ask, especially in this current game. Like, at the time, I didn't think he was at a level of what Wayne Rooney would have been at that time when he came to United at 18 years of age and kind of hit the ground running. I couldn't imagine that Mason Greenwood would be that replacement. I thought we should have went in and got a striker last summer. I thought, Martial I wasn't sure of him in the number 9 this season because his form and his injury record in United was very up and down. But I did kind of feel that time we were crying out for another attacker, and especially in a great midfielder, as you said, we were linked to Bruno and other players like Ndombele and stuff like that. That the moves never materialised. Kind of looking at the start of the season, you mentioned there we got the 4-0 win against Chelsea, and almost I think that win kind of papered over a lot of cracks at Manchester United. You're reflecting that first game of the season. Oh yeah, look, we won 4-0, but you look at the overall gameplay that day. In the first half an hour of that game, Chelsea absolutely battered us. They absolutely battered us. They could have been 3-0 up in the first half an hour. I remember Michy Batshuayi was playing up front for the time. Missed a sitter, went wide when he was 1-on-1 with David De Gea. He hit the crossbar. Mason Mount missed a chance. And I remember that at the time I was thinking, I know we've got Maguire in, but we're still a bit vulnerable at the back. We're getting caught open. And it was kind of, I suppose, a lack of a holding midfielder at the time. I thought, at least we're not great. Like, we're not great at all. And then look, we on the break, we were absolutely devastating that day. I suppose the euphoria of beating Chelsea 4-0, I was happy, but I was thinking, geez, we left a lot there to be desired. Do you know what I mean? There's still a lot more to build. Then obviously you look at the next couple of games that came up at the time, Callum. You had the Wolves game away from home. It was a typical performance we had against Wolves away from home. We always seemed to struggle there. And Dan James, I know he came off the bench against Chelsea and scored, but he kind of looked like the championship player. Then I was thinking at that point, look, we brought this man in to replace Sanchez and Lukaku almost, and it kind of looked like this could be a long old season. And then we had the home loss to kind of Crystal Palace, and we drew Southampton away from home, and you remember the away loss to Newcastle. I think for me as a Man United fan, the kind of last 5 years, that was one of my lowest points as a United fan. I was kind of thinking myself, I was like, I don't even fancy us to finish Europa League. Never mind Champions League. At that time, it was kind of a very low point, and we because Paul Pogba was actually obviously injured at that time, and we were playing kind of Andreas Pereira and kind of Jesse Lingard in them roles, and it looked very bleak at that time. I don't know how you felt at that stage of the season, but for me, it was a very kind of awkward time of the season because our results were kind of up and down, but we lacked real consistency, and it was kind of a very disheartening time to be a United fan.
You summed it up perfectly by saying it was disheartening. It was, and for me, what was, and I said it again about the Chelsea game, what was really concerning was the fact that when it came to playing in the counter, United looked good. But as I say, when the team set up in the low block and said, right, shows what you've got, it was poor. With Pogba being out of the team, the likes of McTominay and Fred are very workmanlike. They do a good job, but they aren't going to split defences open. The likes of Juan Mata, Jesse Lingard, Andreas Pereira, decent players, but not Manchester United players anymore for me. I think Pereira's had his chance. I think Lingard certainly had something to offer in the last couple of years. This year, I think he's tailed off, and I think he should move on just for himself more than anything to become a consistent first-team player. And in terms of Mata, a great footballer, a joy to watch, but age isn't on his side anymore, let's be honest.
His legs are gone. They're absolutely gone.
I agree. And for me, I think the lack of creativity to open up a defence was evident in the sense that Martial and Rashford weren't really firing all guns blazing at that stage of the season as well. The defence could be got at because although you had McTominay and Fred in the midfield trying to protect it, there was no real protection because they could easily be dragged out of position when the ball was lost further up the field. And when you mention that Newcastle game, it just brings back that gut feeling of, I'm really worried about the rest of this season now. That you know what it's like, social media backlash, you see other clubs' fans saying that United, Ollie are done. And you think to yourself, how do you come back from that? But it was slowly but surely, as we'll come to, going to get better after January. But you think about that Newcastle game, even after that, it was all peaks and troughs. There was no consistent run of form for a long while, which did leave me very concerned because with a lack of creative force in the team and being so reliant on counter-attacking football, as you rightly said, it just screamed as if, right, we're going to finish below even the Europa League spots here.
Like, and we'll kind of come to January in a minute, like, obviously the turning point of our season, but you even look at December, like, kind of reflecting on it, like, we had big games kind of in that period. We had Everton, Old Trafford, we had Tottenham, Man City. All them games, kind of in their own right there, we played very well. Like, you look at the game at Man City at the Etihad, absolute counter-attacking masterclass from Manchester United. We tore them apart in the counter. City, Joe, they didn't look one bit comfortable against us. And then look at it then, obviously we had the midweek game against Tottenham against our former manager, Jose Mourinho. And I remember that now, being honest, anyone who knows me that day, I was in college and it was Whitmas. For Callum, for you that doesn't know this, Whitmas is a Christmas festival that we have in college, which is basically Little Christmas. You go on the beer kind of all day. So by the time the United and Tottenham match rolled around at that time, I was quite intoxicated. But still very excited to obviously watch Man United play against Mourinho. And watching us come out in the first few minutes of that game, even though I was drunk, but I'll never forget it. United were on the front foot from the minute go. I remember Mason Greenwood started up front that day, and we were all kind of shocked. We were thinking, he's going with Greenwood up front, like Dan James and Rashford at the time. I was thinking, we're all kind of expecting Martial to play, but it was kind of a situation where, look, Ollie's putting the kind of fate in the youth and kind of going for a press, especially Tottenham's kind of counter-attacking abilities. At that time, that was a very kind of risky move by Ollie. It was brave. But look, it paid off. Like Marcus Rashford scored a goal. Now look, Gazaniga in goal that day could have done better. But I thought that day, like when we beat Tottenham and we kind of, so we really fought for that result. I thought that day, look, that's going to be an absolute turning point. We're going to go on and we're going to win a couple of games. We're going to fight for the Champions League places. But it wasn't to be. Like we kind of got to the tail end of December. The football still wasn't great. Now we beat Burnley away from home in a very kind of poor game of football. And then we got to kind of the New Year's Day game against Arsenal to kind of kick off 2020 for us. That day, I felt very confident because Arsenal were just after being taken over by Mikel Arteta. And, obviously they had a new manager, a new kind of philosophy. And look, defensively, Arsenal are, we give a lot of slating on this podcast, but they weren't great at that time. Now, I know defensively they've kind of cleared up their kind of vulnerabilities, a bit at the moment, but at that time, they were absolutely shocking. And I was thinking at the time, lovely, great way to start the new year. Martial, Rashford, were back at the time. They're kind of firing on all cylinders. McTominay and Fred were on great form. The Nemanja Matic at the turn of the year, kind of since Christmas, was starting to pick up his pace in midfield as well. And I was thinking at that point, right, this is going to be a great time, great start to the new year. Go to the Emirates, make a statement, and we'll go on and we'll kickstart our year and let's see where we can go. But it was one of the worst performances again from a Manchester United team that I ever seen. Like, I remember Rio Ferdinand and Robin van Persie notably analysing the game, and we lacked so much creative direction. We were so slow on the ball. It was all sideways. I don't know if you remember this, but on BT Sport after the game, they showed the runs Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial were making in behind Arsenal's defence. Not one United midfielder was looking up. And it was just the case that they were almost afraid, to go and try to be creative and kind of express themselves. And I remember Robin Van Persie was questioning Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's mentality as a Manchester United manager to get onto his players. It almost seemed like Ole was kind of afraid to deliver any criticism at that point, and it kind of looked a very bleak time for United. What did you think about that time when we kind of restarted the new year against Arsenal? What do you think after that game?
Well, you mentioned Van Persie there. I remember his criticism, and it was pretty sharp. Basically saying, is he too nice to be Manchester United manager? Has he got what it takes to survive in this job long term? If he does, he needs to start showing it. And actually, I think if you remember after the game when Ollie was asked about those comments, he gave a bullish answer. He gave an answer as if, no, I'll show you. And again, you know what it's like. Because of how flat the performance was, you think, right, you might show us for a game or two, but where's this consistent run of form coming from? Because we've not seen it all season until now. But I think he obviously believed in the likes of Martial and Rashford, and as you've said there, with the runs being pinpointed, he just needed a creative player to spot those runs. Because, as I've said earlier, as good as McTominay and Fred are, they don't naturally get the ball and look up and look to spray a pass and put someone in. They are far more comfortable as players when they've got a Pogba type player in the midfield with them, where they can pick the ball up and spring the pass to him and let him do the creative work.
Yeah.
I think when you put the onus on the likes of Matic, McTominay and Fred to do the creative work, as we've seen, it doesn't work. For me, Matic, he can play a good ball, but he needs a wee bit of time on the ball. I think if you're asking him to do things quickly, that's not his game. McTominay, workhorse, but for me, he's the sort of player who needs to, and I mean this with all due respect, he needs to know his limitations of, right, win the ball back, drive forward and find a more creative player. And there's no harm in knowing that's your role in a Manchester United team. You look back at another Scot who played for United in the last decade, and Darren Fletcher. Darren Fletcher was brilliant at that. He knew,
fantastic footballer. Fantastic.
He knew his role was to win the ball back, play a 1-2, but ultimately get the ball to a more creative player. Darren Fletcher wasn't going to pick the ball up and run past 3, 4, 5 players and have a long shot at goal. He was going to get the ball, win it back and look for a more creative player. And for me, I think McTominay needed just to be told, and maybe Fred as well, know your role, lads. I know at the moment we're asking you to do an awful lot because Pogba was injured. Fernandes hadn't yet arrived, but I think when the creativity came back into the midfield, those guys were far more comfortable in their role. And I think as well, so they should be, in the sense that, let's be honest, I don't think Scott McTominay or Fred ever expected to be put in a position where they were expected to be the creative forces in a Manchester United midfield. Yeah,
like you look at, I think McTominay and Fred, I think they've been very improved. I think Scott McTominay, I remember we had a podcast early on when we first started the weekly armchair kickoff. We had all different fans on, and we had a chat. We said William Brent was on. He was the person who said this. So I posed a question to William. There was a Liverpool fan, a Chelsea fan, and myself, with William. And I said to William, if you could take a player from any of the opposition, of all the sides, to fit Arsenal's team, who would you pick? And he turned around and he said Scott McTominay, because of his energy and his drive in midfield, and it's obviously something Arsenal needed. But to hear rival fans saying that, especially when 12 to 18 months ago, if you said that Scott McTominay would have been a pick from a rival fan, you would have laughed at him. You would have said, look, what are you on? What are you smoking? But yeah, look, I suppose we kind of progressed in January. We had the EFL or Carabao Cup or Carling Cup, whatever you call it, the Mickey Mouse Cup semi-final. And we had against our City rivals, Manchester City. And look, I suppose that game at Old Trafford was a massive, massive wake-up call, I think, for Man United's board in terms of what they needed to do. Because, let's call it a spade. We got absolutely battered at home. I know we scored a goal, we got bet 3-1. But that first half of football, probably I know I've kind of slated us throughout this podcast, first half of the season, but that was the worst first half of football I've watched as a Manchester United fan. We're 3-0 down at half time. We're 2-0 down or 3-0 down. Correct me if I'm wrong. And we just didn't look like a United team at all. We just looked like a bang average mid-table side. We were devoid of any confidence. And City just cut us open. And at that point, I was thinking, this is a semi-final at Old Trafford. And you're not showing any fight and determination. Now, in the second half, we started showing a bit more fight. We brought on, I know he left us now, but Angel Gomez came on. And we changed the shape. We went to kind of a 5 at the back, which kind of became a permanent fixture in terms of formation in the bigger games. And all he looked like he could change. He could change the system. And we went on. Now, I know I'm probably laughed at for saying this, but we went on and we won the second half. Now, look, I know that's a cliche people like managers use, but we went out and we won the second half, and Ollie showed some tactical flexibility in that respect. And people kind of slagged Ollie, saying he was kind of a one-trick pony, but I think that was kind of, I know we lost the game, but I think that second half was kind of a turning point in United season in terms of him showing that he has a bit of flexibility about himself. Then we had I believe it was the Burnley game at Old Trafford. Now, I'm not going to swear. I'm going to try my best here. But that Burnley game at Old Trafford, that screamed volumes in terms of where Man United were at as a club at that time, in terms of mentality, in terms of creativity, in terms of confidence, mentality. None of it was there. Burnley, now no disrespect to Sean Dyche, fantastic manager, lovely man. Burnley are a great workman-like team. But Burnley coming to Old Trafford and bossing us. And just like Jay Rodriguez scored an absolute worldie in the Stretford end. That was a very low point for me as a Manchester United fan. Probably, I know, I just alluded to one of the worst performances I've seen in Old Trafford that first half against Manchester City. But that was the most embarrassing moment for me as a Manchester United fan, to get bet 2-0 at home to Burnley. How did you feel at that time? At that time we got beat by Burnley, because there was no rumours of Bruno. There was a lot of fan unrest, which we're going to get to in a minute. But how did you feel at that time?
I'll be honest with you, and I think it's important to be honest. I thought Ollie was done after the Burnley game. I'll be honest with you, I didn't see a way back for United. Miles behind Leicester City, really looking well out of the race for any sort of Champions League conversation, never mind qualification. And just as you rightly mentioned, was incredibly flat. Ironically, you mentioned Jay Rodriguez scores the goal. I've got a very good relationship with the Rodriguez family. They're a lovely family, and I've got a lot of time for Jay, but I wasn't thanking him and his dad Kiko that night. I tell you, I was absolutely raging. So I was saying, well done, good game, in a gritted teeth type way. But I think the frustration and the anguish that defeat caused clearly put pressure on the Manchester United board to act. Now, I want to cut with the fan unrest quickly, and I want to make this very, very clear. Ed Woodward gets a lot of stick, and I can understand why Ed Woodward gets a lot of stick, because if you speak to most people who are in the game, in terms of journalists who've met Ed Woodward, they will tell you, lovely guy, very nice guy, always ask after your family, very caring, lovely guy. But he's not necessarily a football man in terms of knowing the game inside out. And I think they should have brought some sort of technical director in to really take that pressure off of him. I don't know if deep down, again, this is me only speculating, that he was worried if he brought in a director of football that it would maybe undermine him and his power at the club. I don't know. I'm only speculating. But one thing I've
heard with that, Callum, I've kind of heard that it was kind of a power trip type of thing, that he probably thought that it'll undermine him, exactly what you said, and I think he is just against it. Now look, I suppose Ed Woodward, from a commercial point of view, fantastic the deals he's done for United. 2013, like the Adidas deal, the deal with Chevrolet, Like, he's been fantastic. But I think from a football standpoint, like, I'm gonna be blunt about it. The man hasn't a clue. Like, the man wanted to sign Bastian Schweinsteiger because he's a big name. He was over the hill. He signed. I know Paul Pogba was a fantastic player. Brought him in because it would probably make more money. You know, Mourinho didn't want him at the time. Now, look, I don't agree with most things Mourinho says, but Paul Pogba was brought back for the Pogba, kind of the more commercial side of things. But I think Ed Woodward, like, from a footballing standpoint, you're absolutely right, hasn't a clue.
As you say, when it comes to running the recruitment side of things, he should not be in charge of recruitment at Manchester United, or indeed any football club, because I think, for instance, on BTP this week, was lucky enough to speak to Damien Kamali, who was Director of Football at Arsenal, Spurs and Liverpool, and when we asked him, how crucial do you think it is in the modern game for clubs to have a Director of Football, he said, well, I'll be honest with you, if you don't have one, I think you're partially setting up to fail, because all the major elite clubs, with arguably the exception of Real Madrid, who obviously have Florentino Perez, have directors of football. Now, the point he made was great, and I suppose Ed Woodward might think this applies to United, but when Real Madrid come calling and flutter their eyes at you, most players go there in a heartbeat because of their culture, especially players from abroad. I mean, if you're from South America or continental Europe, Real Madrid and Barcelona are probably going to be the two clubs you want to join. Whereas if you are based in the UK, Scandinavia, even in the States, Manchester United might be the club you want to join. But for me, one of the things I do want to make clear, Keane, and I think it's important we do make this clear, what the fans, or a group of people did rather, protesting at Ed Woodward's house, I cannot condone, I cannot agree with that, I cannot say that's acceptable, because it's not. And I think, yes, I understand the frustration towards Ed Woodward and maybe parts of the ownership, but there's ways to go about it, and we can't sit here, not that any of us would, and support that, because Manchester United's an institution, it's a worldwide club, and you cannot send that image out across the world, never even mind just across Manchester, because you might disagree with Ed Woodward, you might think he doesn't know a lot about football, and you might think he shouldn't have anything at all to do with recruitment, but getting anywhere near the man's house and terrorising him and his family, for me, is just totally below the belt.
Yeah, look, I think, I'll be honest with you right now. I went to the Liverpool game in October, and I was in a fan protest, but it was a peaceful protest. It was a Glazers out protest. I've been very vocal online that I am against the Glazers ownership, but we done it in a civilised manner. We walked from the Tollgate bar in Manchester to Old Trafford collectively, and look, we did, we had the flares, so the green and gold flares, but we never done anything in kind of an aggressive manner where we attacked anyone or did anything kind of in a criminal aspect. It was a protest saying we want the Glazers out, we banners and kind of the whole lot. And we were singing United songs, so we were singing Solskjaer's name and back Solskjaer. But we never done that in an aggressive manner. There's ways to approach things. These fans have social media platforms. These fans are very, some of the fans who might have been related to it, allegedly, have big followings. There's ways to go about things. Attacking a man's family, a man's home. Now, at the time, it's been found out that he actually wasn't there. Him and his family weren't there. That's not condoning the actions. Whether they're there or not, you shouldn't do it. It's fucking despicable. And look, I'm sorry for swearing. I don't swear normally on this podcast, but it's something you don't do. It's just something you don't do. And if you want to protest, I slag Arsenal a lot, right? I give Arsenal grief the whole time. Like William will tell you, or Chrissy Gearon, whoever's on this podcast, they'll tell you, I slag Arsenal. But they bring banners to the stadium. They bring banners to the stadium against Stan Kroenke, or at the time was Arsene Wenger. Now, I didn't agree with the Arsene Wenger protest because what he done for their club, but they done it in a mildly civilised way. But they done it in a way that's not attacking a man's family in a man's home. We have the biggest fan base in world football, truth be told. David Beckham, back in, I think it was 2010, publicly showed his disagreement with the Glazers by holding a green and gold scarf. He done that in a civilised manner. Wayne Rooney back in summer 2010. He, in a way, done a protest against the Glazers, and he handed in a transfer request because he thought the club wasn't going in the right direction. That's the way you do things. You get vocal online. You get set up petitions. You do whatever you need to do. Get influential people behind your protest online or at a match or whatever. Sell the green and gold scarves. Do whatever you need to do. Bring banners to the stadium. Do what you need to do. But don't tackle a man's family and home. Like, he has a wife and kids. Like, that's... I think Callum goes out saying you just don't do it. And what, like, image does that send to maybe... Now, let's say, for example, like, the new owners wanted to come in and they made a bid for the club. Let's say in a year or two time. They'll look at that now. Like, if they're UK-based owners, they'll look at that and be like, do we really want to become Manchester United owners? Let's say if we make a decision, will they come for us? Like, that kind of sets a kind of bad image and a bad example of, let's be clear, and like, I'm wearing my United, like, vintage United top here now, and I want to make this clear across all the fan base. That was a vocal minority of fans. That wasn't the majority. We need to make that clear. And I'm not questioning their roles as Manchester United fans. Every fan, whether you're across the platform, whether it's here, whether it's your channel at Football CFB, Beyond the Pitch, the United Stand, Stretford Paddock, wherever platform you have or whatever type of fan you have, every fan has a right to an opinion, and every fan can be as passionate as they want about a club. But attacking a man's family and a man's go home with fireworks or whatever you're doing is just unacceptable. And I just look, I wasn't like, you know, back in the move at the time. I thought there was more civilized ways to do it, but yeah, look, it was definitely wrong what they done.
Well, as you've said, I think if you're going to protest against Ed Woodward, the Glazers, or whoever your anger is directed towards, you've mentioned it, gathering a big group of people and marching to the stadium from a bar or wherever in a group, being vocal, peaceful, banners, etc., absolutely fine. In the stadium, if you want to sing songs to direct your message, I'm, again, more than happy for people to do that. It's acceptable, but obviously watch how you word it, because the moment you sing for someone to have physical harm, etc., that's when your message gets lost. But I agree with you. I think if fans want to protest against anyone, they have the right to do it. But as you've rightly said, and you've made the point I wanted to make, it's a bit important how you do it, because if the Glazers sell up, and United fans have got a history of doing this now, they don't. It was a by all accounts a one-off incident, which thankfully hasn't happened again since. But you look at that, and as you say, you cannot set that precedent, because if someone wants to buy the club and that's what they see, it might put people off. And you get fans that will say, "Nah, it won't. United sells itself." Of course, it sells itself, but at the same time, if they are UK based or they have family who are based in the UK, they are not going to want that to be associated with them if something was to go wrong. But as you've said, the protests, the loss to Burnley certainly woke the owners up, in the sense that Fernandes arrives and then Ode Nagalo arrives as well.
Yeah, so look, I suppose, we did kind of go into great detail about after the Burnley game, the protests and stuff like that. And look, our fans were concerned. We were like, 14, 15 points off Leicester. And, look, I suppose we weren't even looking at Leicester at that time. We were kind of looking at catching Chelsea. We still had, I think it was a 7-8 point gap to the top four at that time. Then, obviously, the transfer window was nearly closed in January, and we signed Bruno Fernandes. Now, we were very vocal ourselves with Bruno Fernandes kind of coming in. He's a revelation. He came in and you sensed the culture and the confidence in players change. His mentality, you even seen in his first game against Wolves. Now, look, I know, Callum, we drew 0-0. And look, it wasn't the greatest of games. But you seen him telling Lingard to go here, telling Dan James to go there, telling, I think it was Harry Maguire, and I think it was Lindelof at the time, step up the pitch. He showed them leadership qualities in the first half of football as a Man United player. You thought he would have been there years with his mentality. I look at that, Callum, and I was thinking, Jesus Christ, we have a player there. Because he even showed bits when he was working between the lines, and you seen we had a player there. Bruno, I can't stress enough, Callum. Bruno Fernandes, when he came in them first couple of games against Wolves, against Chelsea, against Watford, he really showed like what we were missing. We were devoid of it all season. His creativity, his confidence in midfield, his drive. And then, as you said, Ole Gunnar came in. And, like, look, that week, right, we were linked with Islam Slimani, Josh King, Ole Gunnar. I think we're linked with someone else as well, like, can't think of it. But they were kind of like the main three we were linked with. Now, I was looking at that week. I don't know how you felt on kind of deadline day, but I had my head in my hands and I was thinking, I know we signed Fernandes and he's been absolutely fantastic and we're starting to get a couple more positive results, but if this is what Manchester United are going for in the number 9, we're in big, big trouble. Like, what's going on? But then Gallo comes in and like he played a couple of games in the Europa League and he was an absolute revelation. Like if you had to rate kind of United's transfer business out of 10 kind of in that time, I know we didn't have a positive one, but what would you rate it?
I think, to be honest with you, under Ole, I would give him a 7.5 or an 8, because if you think about the players he's brought in, Wan-Bissaka, definitely an upgrade in the right back department. You can question his ability going forward, but he's definitely an upgrade in what was there. I think Dan James, the reason I would say I would give him a pass mark is because £15 million is nothing to a club like Manchester United in the previous era before COVID, of course. That was a snip, really. So that essentially that could be one player's yearly wage. So I think it was a transfer that is good in the sense that he can hopefully develop and grow. Maguire, I think he was overpriced. Don't get me wrong, but I think again, was he better than what was there? You would have to say yes, because if you went into the season with Smalling and Jones, I don't think you'd be happy with that. I know I certainly wouldn't be. Fernandes.
I'm sick. I was sick of them too. I swear to God, I was sick to the bloody teeth of seeing Smalling and Jones line out in a Manchester United shirt. To be fair, the fact that Phil Jones gets a testimonial, well, he's going to get a testimonial if he doesn't leave.
Well, he has said, though, to be fair, which he's actually, fair play to him, he said he's turned down a testimonial because he said he doesn't even think his own family would turn up to it.
Oh my God, that's lousy.
So I think he gets that, and the Sheffield United game for me was the end of him at Manchester United. But the other two signings, Fernandes, as we're talking about, revelation, changed the club. I mean, Danny Higginbotham was talking recently about if he was a manager of a team in the first half of the season against United, he would have said, drop deep, low block, let's see what they've got, because they won't trouble you. But the problem, as he rightly says now, with Fernandes coming in, with Pogba being fit, is if you drop deep, you've got Fernandes and Pogba who can open you up or take a shot from distance. So you can't ignore those two. The moment you go to close those down, that's when the space in behind naturally opens up anyway. So the more creative players you've got, the better. But and on Gallo also, just very briefly, I think the fact he's clearly got passion for Manchester United, it was a dream move for him. He took a big pay cut to join the club, albeit on loan. I think showed that although he maybe wasn't the stardust you would expect from a Manchester United signing, his heart was in the right place. Not that means you should sign for the club, but to be fair to him, when he's had the chances to start in the FA Cup and in the Europa League, he's performed. So I think he's been a positive as well. But Fernandes really changed the season in the sense that he added that creativity, and crucially, as we go into the lockdown, I think it gives Pogba even more motivation to make sure he can get himself fully fit, to look forward to playing alongside a fellow player who you have to say is on his creative level. Yeah, and like, look, I'm just before we kind of get to United's form, post lockdown, you kind of look when Fernandes came in, we beat Chelsea, away from home, and in the FA Cup. So in the FA Cup, they bet us. We won't talk about that. We beat them in the reverse fixture at Stamford Bridge, and it was quite comfortable. Bruno Fernandes got an assist that day for Maguire. And he done fantastic, and he was a very big difference that day. Then we had the game against Norwich at Old Trafford. Fantastic again, we were good that day. Then I think Bruno Fernandes, before the lockdown, the big game was against Manchester City, the last game before Old Trafford with fans.
I was actually meant to be at that game. I'm going to tell a story here now with relation to that game. I was meant to go to that game with a couple of friends, and we watched the Manchester City first leg at Old Trafford. And I was studying in college at the time. My exams are going to be kind of right after the United City game. And I think, obviously, look, I'm going to be stressed out at the exams. United aren't playing well. Bruno Fernandes wasn't in at that time, and I was like, you know what? I'm giving my tickets back. Now, Callum, I can't stress this enough. I travel to United a few times a year, every season, to go over. And do I love the club, and I live and breathe the club. But at that time, I fell out of love before Bruno came in. I was starting to fall out of love in terms of travelling over, and I was obviously studying as well. It was kind of a low point for me as a Man United fan. I couldn't grab myself to do all the travel over from Ireland, and then obviously miss college and the whole lot. It was kind of a low point for me, do you know? And in a way, it was kind of symbolic in a way that I gave my tickets back or whatever. And United, it was the last game before lockdown, and Bruno Fernandes that day showed everything I wanted in a Manchester United player. Like, he showed passion in that game against City. He showed drive. That pass from Martial, remember, from the free kick, that was absolutely beautiful. And he showed what we were missing that day. And for me, like Scott McTominay, like I've on my away jersey this season, I have Max Sauce number 39 on the back of the jersey because I just love the man, right? He's a fantastic player. He scores a goal from the halfway line in the 96th minute of a game, and Old Trafford was like euphoria. Like, everyone was singing all these names. And I think that point of the season, Callum, for me, the feel-good factor was properly back. Man United I felt like at that point, Man United were back. We got our club back again. Now, look, I was absolutely sick and I didn't get to go to the game. But still watching that game live on telly and seeing what McTominay and the likes of Bruno that day and Fred was fantastic. And we showed that fight and passion. I think, for me, that was the biggest turning point of the season. I felt like anyway, almost, that we had our club back.
Totally agree, in the sense that the momentum was building. The game against City, you know how dominant they've been in the last couple of years, to everyone's disappointment. But to get that win and to get that goal at the end topped it all off as well. And you're right, it felt that the club were going in the right direction. It felt that there was a momentum back, and it felt as if you were watching United again. And to be honest with you, post-lockdown's been the same. United have played on the front foot. To be honest, yes, they got leggy in the last few games, but they played in the front foot. The Brighton game, the goal in the counter-attack was just vintage United.
It was like 2009 United. Remember that goal against Arsenal?
Absolutely. And it was just, you're spot on, it was just vintage United, and it's what you like to see. You like to see a team with players like Bruno Pogba get the ball, look forward, because yes, controlling possession is important, but at the same time, my style of football, I love to see a team going forward on the attack, and pains me to say it, but you look at Liverpool don't keep the ball 80-90% possession. They're not scared to go direct or get it in the channels, and I don't think teams should be ashamed of doing that, because the more attacking, fast-flowing football you can play, I'm certainly not going to complain. And with United's form up until arguably just the last few games when they got a bit leggy, by God, it was a joy to watch.
Yeah, like I assess it now, like looking at United post-lockdown, that first game against Spurs, at the time, I agreed with all these team selection. You know, I went to McTominay and Fred and Bruno because that was kind of working, you know, before the pandemic kind of took its course. But when we brought Greenwood and Fernandes on that day, and you've seen how much in the front foot we were. Now, our colleague Steve McGrath on the podcast, he's very vocal about that. Eric Dyer foul on Paul Pogba. He thinks it wasn't a penalty. But you've seen how good we were, how much drive we had when we had the likes of Greenwood, Pogba, Fernandes, Martial, Rashford, all on the same pitch at the same time. You've seen we're on the front foot. And then you get to the Sheffield United game at Old Trafford. We absolutely opened the floodgates that day. It's fantastic on the front foot, you know, going forward. And even, I know defensively, the question marks weren't there. We looked like a team that was totally reborn and looked like, I know we were still a bit off the Champions League places, but you've seen that we were going to push everyone. Like, I was confident that Leicester were going to drop points. I've been very vocal on previous podcasts on Twitter, on our Twitter lives before we started doing recording, that I believe that of all teams, Leicester are there to be got because their fixture list on it, because obviously our injuries were returning. I was very vocal that United could maybe scrape fourth. But yeah, we were fantastic. And then you've seen, obviously, you've alluded to the Brighton game. That was classic Manchester United in terms of moving the ball. We were able to go forward, but also hit teams on the break. Now, look, I suppose you look at United's form post-lockdown, we have to address it. David De Gea. We talked about a couple of times on the podcast, Callum and off air. He showed his vulnerabilities. He showed that maybe he's finished at the top level as a goalkeeper. We've debated many a time that we believe he's finished right. I've been vocal on Twitter. I've said he's finished. And obviously, look, Harry Maguire, he showed vulnerabilities in terms of his pace. But I think this kind of post-lockdown period, there's a lot more positives and negatives, and we've done quite well to get a third place finish. I thought, Ollie, for those, like, we had a chat with Terry the other day, and people were labeling Ollie as a PE teacher, and we both thought Ollie was done after the Burnley game. Like, I was calling for Pochettino to come in after that Burnley game. Well, to be honest, like, look, people might call me a flip-flop with this, but I didn't have any confidence in Ollie that time because, like, it was a dark time. It was a dark time to be a United fan. But to show what he can do as a manager in terms of when he had the resources there, well, let's call a spade a spade. Pereira, Lingard, Mata, they're not players who are going to get you top four. But to have the likes of Pogba, Rashford available, Greenwood available, Bruno Fernandes, Ollie showed that he can bring back the United DNA when he has the personnel. Like any manager of football, I've done coaching myself. To be successful in management, you need to have the right personnel to adapt your philosophy. Like, I don't care what anyone says. No manager can go in with a team that lacks that much creativity. No manager can go in and wave a magic wand. Not unless you're Sir Alex Ferguson. Not unless you're Sir Alex. You're not going to be successful. And to show what Ollie had done, that transformation kind of right before COVID and post-COVID, I think we've been absolutely exceptional since lockdown, and I think the feel-good factor really is there. And finishing third. Now, look, I'm not going to celebrate it. Like, for us, Manchester United, we're the biggest club in England. I don't care if Liverpool won the league. Look, fair play to them. Well fucking done. You got it done in the first time in 30 years. We're the biggest club in England, if not the world. We should be winning titles. We should be winning Champions Leagues. That's what we expect as a fan base. I'm not going to celebrate finishing third. I'm not going to throw a party and go missing for a couple of days. But what I will do is commend Ollie, because it's his first full season as a manager. As we alluded to earlier on the podcast, he did lose key players, but he's done absolutely fantastic to turn it around this season.
He has done, and I agree with you. I'm not going to be going out on a 4-day bender because we've finished third. But what I will do is, as you've said, is congratulate the manager, because he's proven himself to have more in his locker than people gave him credit for. We spoke to Andy Gray again on BTP this week, and Andy was very critical of Ollie early in the season, and Phil Brown put it to him. He says, "What do you make Ollie now, Andy?" And Andy, as you know, not somebody for changing his mind, often said, "I'll be honest with you guys, I think I have to give him credit in the sense that he's a lot better than I thought he would be." And credit to him. I think the crucial thing that we are going to come to, and I think we should address it now, is Ollie's done really well. This United team have done really well. But it's important he, Mike Phelan and his staff, do not allow the ownership, do not allow Ed Woodward to think, that's great, we don't need much. United still are a few players short. They need Jadon Sancho to come in for me. They need another centre-back. There's a clip that's on social media at the moment where Ollie said to Nathan Ake, "We're in the market for a left-footed centre-half, you'll do." Obviously, he's going to Manchester City by the looks of it.
Yeah.
Sancho, a centre-half, and I think we should sign Jack Grealish. I don't think he'll start every week, but that doesn't matter. You need players who can put pressure on Pogba and Bruno if they're off form, because Lingard and Pereira are not terrifying Pogba and Bruno Fernandes. Lingard and Pereira, the only people they're terrifying are the fan base.
Yeah, like, look, absolutely. We're going to get to it later on the podcast, but look, we're going to just address it now. Transfer-wise, absolutely. Look, I suppose United as a club didn't really go into talks about Jadon Sancho because it was up in the air if we'd have Champions League or not. And believe it or not, the Champions League money is very important to Jadon Sancho coming in. Like, he's vocal about wanting to come back to England. But I believe it probably never hinged on Champions League on his side because Man United is Man United. But United need a Champions League to go in and spend the big bucks on him. Now, Rob Dawson was on our podcast from ESPN. Myself and yourself talked to him, and he said if he was a betting man, expect Jadon Sancho. And this is before we got Champions League. It's been very muted in the media. Like we've been told that basically the structure of the deal is going to be that we're going to pay 60-70 million up front, and then it's going to be about 30-40 million add-ons. Look, I think maybe in the long run, it's a very expensive figure. I think Jadon Sancho would prove to be worth it. Like, we've been crying out for a right winger since 2013.
I agree, but the only thing I would add to that is Jan Gafortov, who is absolutely superb and all over Bundesliga news, has basically said that United will not be allowed to pay 60 or 70 million pounds as an upfront fee. Dortmund are very clear; it has to be 100 million euros up front, and you would put bonuses or add-ons, whatever you want to call it, in there. And crucially, the deadline is August the 10th. And he has said that Dortmund will not budge on August the 10th. If Manchester United don't come and get him and pay the money by August the 10th, they will not have the player because he's got 2 years left in his deal. And if they keep him for another season, they can maybe sell him for the 60 or 70 next summer where he's at a reduced rate and still get a good year out of him. So the tactic that United used last summer of delay when it came to Harry Maguire, that won't work with Sancho, and I think the club have to make sure they get him because there's no point installing a player you want. You know his price, you know his value, sign him, add him to the squad and give Ole the confidence that you are backing him, because it won't just lift Solskjaer and the fan base, it will lift the players in that squad because they will see that the board, Ed Woodward, are serious about pushing Manchester United on, and that can only help the dressing room as well as the manager.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, look, we've been briefed saying that from obviously the English media and whoever else, the sources that we have, Callum, we've been told that obviously that's what United are going to do. Is that was their plan in terms of offering that little figure and obviously doing the kind of installments or add-ons almost. But I suppose it remains to be seen kind of how United approach this. Like, the long game won't work. Like, German clubs, excuse my French, but they don't take bullshit. They don't. They really don't. Bayern Munich don't do it. They don't sell their best players for a cheap price. If anything, they wait till they're over the hill. To obviously look like Thiago, like he's bad injury record, and he looks like he's heading to Liverpool. But if he had any kind of significance to Bayern Munich, I don't think they'd be selling him for 30 million. I'd look at German clubs, they don't take any bullshit. So, like, remains to be seen. If they say August 10th the deadline, Ed Woodward better pull out that checkbook and do whatever needs to be done to get Sancho. In terms of Jack Grealish, look, I love Aston Villa. I think they're a very traditional Premier League team. As you said, they're a great club and they're very nice people, and you're working with them yourself. But Jack Grealish, I just want Villa to go down. I know I sound horrible by saying that, but transfer fee wise, he would only cost us 40-50 million. Now with Villa staying up, they're looking for 70-80. For a player that's going to be warming the bench, look, it's debatable. Would people pay it? If United, I think Jack Grealish, I know he's a lifelong Villa fan and he is a Villa man, Callum, but I think Jack Grealish, he wants to have ambition. He'll kind of say to Villa, look, I've saved you 60-70 million by staying in the Premier League. You need to show me the common courtesy now and let me leave. Look, charge United 50-60 million, but don't charge him 70-80. Like, I kept you up. You need to show me that respect, you know? Like, do you think for a player that's going to be obviously on the cusp of first team, do you think we should pay that money, like 70-80 million for a Grealish?
I wouldn't pay 70 or 80 million pounds. I would probably 50, I think, would be a limit. And I think that's a position where you maybe use a make weight. Now, Aston Villa defensively have required options. They had Axel Tuanzebe on loan a couple of seasons ago. They were very impressed by him by all accounts. For me, he's injured too much. So if United moved him on, I wouldn't be crying too many tears, because I think it gets to the point where give him another year, you just become another Smalling and Jones. You just become another player who's not going to achieve their potential, and you've maybe given too much time to. So could United try and be smart and use players like Tuanzebe as a make weight? A player like Tahith Chong, is he someone that could maybe be made as a make weight on a loan deal along with that? Or maybe even a Fosu Mensah and Tuanzebe? I don't know, but I think United need to be creative if they don't want to pay £70 million for Grealish. But one thing I would say, and people maybe call me biased because I'm doing a bit of work with Aston Villa and their legends, but people laugh when Villa say that Grealish is worth £80 million. Now, I'm not saying he is, but he is worth that to Villa. If Jack Grealish wasn't at Villa last season, they went down and they lost out on £100 million for staying up. So it's the same with Wilfried Zaha last summer. He's never worth £80 million. Palace or Steve Parish must be out in the pub. He must be up to no good. But I think, well, Zaha's worth to Palace £100 million because no Zaha, you don't stay up. No Grealish, you don't stay up. So in the end, I don't think these clubs would be able to hold out. If you put £65 million in front of Aston Villa and said, give us Jack Grealish, I don't personally think they would hold out. I think they would melt and they would sell him. Same with Palace with Zaha. But the clubs have got every right to ask for this amount of money, and it's up to the big clubs to pay it or come up with, as I've said, a creative deal that works for them. Because at the end of the day, if Barcelona or Real Madrid came in for Mason Greenwood and offered you £40 million, you would be absolutely raging. You would be asking for the price that you think he's worth to Manchester.
If they came in with that offer now for Mason Greenwood, I'd flip the bird and be like, look, go home, see you there.
Absolutely, but that's what I mean. I think a player is worth to, especially clubs down the bottom of the Premier League, is worth a lot of money to them, because at the end of the day, without them, then they probably wouldn't be in the league. So that's what I do think makes it slightly difficult. In the end, it comes down to Jack himself, though. He is an Aston Villa lad. He's a fan. He's the captain. Is that enough to keep him at the club for another year? I don't quite know. I'll be honest, though. I actually don't think I'd be surprised if he stays one more year, because Premier League football, Villa should get better this summer and be able to recruit again. And if he's playing week in, week out, arguably he's got more chance of getting in that England squad than he would being a squad player at Manchester United or elsewhere.
Yeah, I suppose Gareth Southgate doesn't pick players on their names. Like he picks players kind of based off their form. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Maybe for the Euros it might suit him, but selfishly as a Manchester United fan, I'm like, look, we'll give you the smallest shin guards we can find, smallest pair of socks, Jack. Look, we'll do whatever for you. Just come and play for Man United. Let's see you in front of the Stretford end.
Absolutely, it would be a pleasure to see him at Manchester United. I know Graham Souness said he takes too many touches, but I think in an Aston Villa team he takes too many touches because, as we referenced earlier on, when it came to United, with guys making runs in behind and not being spotted, I think basically Grealish is looking for someone to give him a run, and he's not getting the run. I mean, no disrespect to him, but Wesley has hardly pulled up any real trees in the Premier League. He's a physical forward, and he's a guy who's a handful. I just don't think he's a natural finisher. And I think for someone like Grealish, it's hard to play in that 10 role, being the playmaker, when you're not really getting the movement you need to play the killer pass.
Absolutely. And just on the kind of the last bit, the transfer front today, I've seen reports say that Gabriel from Lille, his agent, has been in England today, apparently, negotiating with both United and Everton. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know much about this player. I'm going to hold my hands up here and say I don't know much about him. What do you make of this? Like, he's from League One. Do you think there's a 30 million price tag on him? Do you think, is it worth going in for him? Or do you maybe looking at Villa again, do you maybe think of Tyrone Mings or someone like that? Like, what do you make of the whole Gabriel link?
I will be honest and say that Tyrone Mings is not good enough for Manchester United. I'll say that, and I've no bones about it. I think he's a good player. I think he's a player who will do well with Aston Villa, but he's not a Manchester United player. I mean, the fact he got in the England squad, I think, was surprising. I suppose being a left-footed centre-back gives him that credit, but for me, he's not a player who should be playing for one of the top six week in, week out. Nathan Ake, out of any player that was relegated, for me, him and David Brooks would be the two players I would go for. No, Villa weren't relegated, but in terms of team players, who were in and around Villa, other than Grealish, I think those two would be names that come to mind. When we talk about
Rice.
I suppose. When we look at Gabriel, he's 22 years old, playing in the French league with Lille. He's had quite a few loan spells, played at under 20 level for Brazil as well. It would be a risk in the sense that you're bringing him in 22. Are you going to play him week in, week out? And if you're not going to play him week in, week out, I don't really see the point of paying a decent fee for him. But then again, I suppose it could be argued that he can develop and then come in and take over Maguire or Lindelof. But if United are signing a centre half this summer, I want a centre half who can start. I don't want competition, because how many times have we seen it in the past where you hear a player's coming in to put pressure on so and so, and then they end up just becoming that bench player that is in and out the team, and they don't make the grade. And for me, United can't afford to make that mistake, because I just think, for me, Maguire's a good player. He's a solid centre-back on his day, but he badly needs pace around him. And him and Lindelof do not complement each other in regards to pace. And I think if you get a player in beside Maguire, like an Nathan Ake, obviously he's going to Man City, I think you'll see a better Harry Maguire as well.
Absolutely. And you look at all partnerships in the past, Ferdinand, Vidic, Terry Carvalho, you had Sol Campbell and Colo Torre at Arsenal. They're all different styles centre half, and when you have a centre half partnership, they have to complement each other's style. You can't have two centre halves who have similar style. Even look at City when they played John Stones and Laporte centre half, both ball playing centre halves, but none of them really kind of a ball winner and then and a ball player. You don't have that style. I think you need that nowadays. You need a bit of flexibility, not just in the modern game, but in the past as well. Callum, kind of just looking forward to the Europa League campaign. Now, obviously, look, we've kind of a dead rubber game against Las Glynns on Wednesday. Would you like to see the likes of Ethan Laird and Timothy Fosu-Mensah and maybe even James Garner, stuff like that? Would you like to see kind of the young fellas get their kind of run out on Old Trafford, considering the fact we're 5-0 up?
I think you've got to be careful, and I'm not saying you would blow a 5-0 lead, but at the same time, I think you need to be respectful of the opposition, in the sense that I don't think you can play too many kids, just because you know what it's like yourself. You've followed football as long as I have. If you play a team of kids and they go 2-0 down within 10 minutes, it's panic stations. And I'm not saying they would lose the game 6-0. I'm not for 1 minute saying they would go out, but it's panic stations. So I think you will need to get a balance. I think it's the sort of game you will see a Fosu-Mensah start. I don't quite think you'll see Ethan Laird. Out of the younger players, Greenwood will probably start, as you maybe expect. Agallo will start up front for definite. And Chong will probably start. Chong will probably start as well. Brandon Williams will start. But I do think he'll go with Maguire and Lindelof. I think he'll go with his first choice centre-backs, at least for 60 minutes, just to be sure that there's
maybe Eric Bailly get a run out then.
Well, maybe Bailly alongside one of them. That's a good point. But I definitely think he'll go with some established players, just because in football, I'm not saying for 1 minute it would definitely happen, but if you pick too many young players and you go a couple of goals down, it could become panic stations. And I think United will want to really treat it as a training exercise. And let's be honest with you, I don't think Las Glynns have played in a long time either. So they're going to be coming to United really lacking match fitness as well. So I think it really will be a mix of established pros and younger players. And to be honest with you, I see it being a really poor game, because I don't think Lasclins believe they're going to overturn a 5-0 deficit. And I don't think United will be overly bothered about racking up a cricket score when they've got, arguably, you could say, bigger fish to fry in the competition.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one thing I kind of want to make clear, I don't know if you share the same opinion, but I don't want to see Marcus Rashford, Bruno Fernandes or Paul Pogba play this game, any part in this game, even the 10, 20-minute cameo. I don't want to see them anywhere near the pitch. Like, Bruno, like, let's call it spade a spade. As much as we praised him on the podcast today, last 2 or 3 games, he was knackered. Absolutely. And, like...
Absolutely. And I think I would agree with you there. Those players shouldn't play. I mean, when I talk about established players, the likes of your Juan Matas, your Lingards, even your Pereira, this is the sort of game where they're still at the club, so you may as well use them and mix them in with the likes of your Chong and maybe a Garner as well, because I think you need to have a level of senior pro in the squad for that kind of game, because it's important for them as well. But crucially, yeah, I totally agree. I don't think we should be playing Pogba, Rashford, Martial, Bruno. I think you wrap them up in cotton wool. You go with your squad. I think you can put Greenwood in the squad. He's young, he's enthusiastic, he'll do the job if he's required to. But I think you go with that. I agree. I don't think they should be anywhere near the team. And crucially, ordinarily, I don't think De Gea would play. I think they might just keep playing him to try and build confidence, build a bit of confidence rather than give him the cold turkey, put Romero in, and Romero has an absolute stormer of a game, and then the calls for De Gea to get dropped get even louder. So I think you will.
One thing I'll ask you about that, Callum, actually, because Romero's been our cup goalkeeper, and he was actually, apparently, from what I heard, he was very vocal that he didn't play against Chelsea, because he was the cup goalkeeper for all our cup competitions. I know you've made the point of obviously give De Gea more game time, like build his confidence back, but I think that would be an exit door for Sergio Romero if he didn't play these games. Like one thing I'll kind of allude to with this, Callum, I remember Dimitar Berbatov before the 2011 final. He played his fair share of games and he did contribute to the team. Now he was dropped for a Michael Owen who didn't play all season, and Berbatov, that was him finished that night. He was done. Now I think Sergio Romero, when he has been called upon, he has been fantastic, and he's played all the cup games. He's a very good record. I think that'd be the beginning of the end for him at United if he didn't play in the Europa League campaign.
I understand that, and if I'm being totally brutally honest, I think it probably should be the end of the road for Romero. Not in my opinion, but for anyone of the club, but for him, because if De Gea's went through this patch of form where he's been really poor and he's not broken in and had a chance to stake his claim as number one at United, the argument you would obviously have is, will he ever? Because if Dean Henderson returns and they sold De Gea, Henderson would be the number one and not Romero. So I actually think this will be the beginning of the end for Romero regardless, because last few years of his career, international tournaments will be coming up again in the future, and he'll want to make sure he's playing in those tournaments for Argentina. And the only way, let's be honest, he's going to do that is by playing games. And with De Gea staying or going and Dean Henderson returning or going out on loan again, the future doesn't look as if Romero's going to be a United number one anytime soon.
Yeah, I just like to see him get to run the cup games though, because like that's been his role kind of since he's come in. And let's say, for example, if we do bring Dean Henderson back and him and De Gea fight out for that number one shirt next season, I'd like to see Romero go out and maybe get a Europa League medal. Do you know what I mean? I think that'd be fantastic for him. The fact he'd be a 2-time Europa League winner with Man United, I think that'd be kind of a great send-off. If it is, like, let's say, the beginning of the end for Sergio. Potentially, yeah, that makes sense. And as I say, it could work one of two ways. I'm talking about maybe Ole wanting to play De Gea to build confidence. It could be the other sense where he basically says, I'm going to go with Romero and Lee Grant for this Europa League campaign. You stay away, go on a break and refresh yourself. So it could work one of two ways. And if he was to go out Romero with another Europa League medal, then he would be more than deserving of it, because every time he's been called upon, he's been very reliable. And crucially, we all said this a few weeks ago on the show, I think he should have been given a chance for the last few games, because for me, he's never done anything wrong when he's been given the chance at United. It's just unfortunate for him that he's been behind David De Gea for so many years, and sadly for him also, even if De Gea leaves, it looks as if he'll
he'll start behind Dean Henderson at least anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, he's been a good servant to the club. I think we can both agree on that. The fact that when we got him for a free transfer at that time back in, I think it was 2015, we weren't expecting much, but look, fair play to me for what he's done for the club.
Absolutely. A good servant. And for me, United's Europa League campaign will be interesting to see, because the reduced pre-season as it is makes you think, how seriously will they take it? Will we see all of the strongest 11 play, and even in the next round? Potentially not. But I think for Ole, it's a trophy, and for me, he has to go and try and win it, because as soon as you win a trophy, as people say, you shut up quite a few critics, and to have third place in a Europa League victory would be very good. However, I should also say, to contradict that, I think the most dangerous team in the tournament will be Wolves, because unlike some of the other teams in the competition that are left, they're a club that won't have Champions League football unless they win it, whereas the likes of United and Inter Milan have got guaranteed Champions League football. So you have to wonder if their motivation will be up there with a Wolves, who, for Wolves, it's Europa League or bust.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say all Arsenal fans hope Wolves win the Europa League anyway, because then if they get bet in the FA Cup final tomorrow, which I predicted on the show earlier on the FA Cup final preview, which you can check out, that Arsenal lose. That's what I said anyway. So Callum, just to kind of, we're at the end now. Look, it's been a very good kind of chat, and look, we've talked about a lot in terms of United's kind of roller coaster of a season. Predictions for next season, like how do you think we're going to go? Obviously, like, I know we can't kind of delve into it too much, because look, our transfer business hasn't been done, and we don't know kind of injuries and stuff like that haven't creeped up. But where do you think, what can be realistic for us next season?
I think realistic next season will be getting closer to City and Liverpool. In terms of a title challenge, to have a title challenge, for me, you would need to sign Sancho, you would need to sign a Grealish, you would need to sign a top centre-back. Will you get all three in a COVID-19 transfer window? I'll be honest with you, I don't think so. I really don't. I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's just Sancho that comes in. I hope I'm wrong. But I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in as the marquee. The fans will be delighted with that. And Ole basically keeps the squad he's got with Sancho added into it. I hope I'm wrong, because as I say, I think it'd be nice to see a centre-back and another creative midfielder. But I think the club will get closer next season if they can get Sancho at least over the line. I think they'll get closer. Will they win the league? At this stage, I'm not going to put my neck out in the line and say they're going to win or really seriously challenge for the league, because although Sancho's coming in, if Liverpool have still got Salah, Mane, Firmino, Van Dijk, and they don't lose any players, they'll go into the season being up there as favourites. You still look at City, they've got De Bruyne. I know they're losing David Silva, which could have an impact, but they're going in the market quickly. Ferran Torres coming in, Nathan Ake coming in. They don't look as if they're going to mess about. So if United have an ideal summer, could they challenge? Yes. Do I think they'll have an ideal summer? I'll be honest and say no, because I really don't think you'll see a net spend of over 100 million for many teams this season, regardless of their status, whether that be United, Real Madrid or PSG.
Yeah, look, you're absolutely right. I suppose, like, it depends. Like, even in a non-COVID-19 situation, United's like net spend has been like 60-70 million every year. So look, it remains to be seen. But look, if we can get rid of the likes of Lingard, Phil Jones, Chris Smalling, like that off the wage bill, that can maybe contribute to a Jack Grealish signing. In terms of my prediction for next season, I'd like to see United kind of definitely sustain top four a lot earlier than we did this season. I think if we can have it kind of nailed on by March, kind of time where we're comfortable, and let's say reduce the gap from we have in the top four, like from TV to top four, the top two. If we can have that gap reduced from like 15 to 20 points to 8, 9, 10 points, like that's an improvement, and definitely sets kind of the groundwork for a title challenge this season after. Now look, albeit if we're still in thereabouts towards the end of next season, I'd love it. We haven't been in a title challenge since Sir Alex was there. But I think realistic expectations we can have is maybe third place and maybe a Champions League quarter-final next season. And I think that's probably realistic. Even with the current squad, I think that's realistic, regardless if you don't want to add Sancho or Grealish or Joe Upamecano or whoever we're looking at. I think that's a realistic expectation we can have. But I think definitely if we can put more pressure on City and Liverpool and kind of win kind of the games we didn't win this year, like against your likes Newcastle's away and, you know, Aston Villa and at home and stuff like that. If we can stop dropping them stupid little points, we'll definitely be thereabouts in terms of putting pressure on the teams above us. I think we'll do a lot better next season, you know, providing that we do push it.
Completely agree. I think you need to get the business done early. You need to back Ole and you need to build. And as you've said, the third place finish and pushing for that quarterfinals of the Champions League is realistic. And once you get to the quarterfinals, you just never know what could happen. So I think that's definitely got to be the aim. I'm very passionate about there's no point of being in the Champions League unless you've got an intention of winning it. So I do hope they back him, and I hope next season starts in a positive vein. It's not far away, which is pleasing to hear. But I just can't wait to have United back in the Premier League again, hopefully with Jadon Sancho and a few others.
Absolutely. Callum, cheers for coming on tonight. I suppose there's been a very lot of positive and negative points on the podcast tonight, but look, to be fair, we finished the season on a high, and I think at this moment in time, it's a very good time and an exciting time to be a Manchester United fan. Like, for me, it's the most likeable team we've had since Sir Alex Ferguson, and look, the only way is up from here, hopefully anyway.
Only way is up, and as you know, it's an absolute pleasure to be on, and I absolutely love contributing to the show, and long may the positivity continue in terms of next season. I hope we're talking every week about 3-0 wins and hat-tricks being scored and great goals being scored, because if we're talking about that, then not only will life be good on the pitch watching United, but it will also be great off it as well.
Absolutely, and I'd love just to go back to 4-0 FC. That was a very high point in my life. I'd just like to say as well, look, Adam has just sent me his apologies for not being able to come on tonight. He was busy today. So look, Adam has just messaged me and said, look, he will be on our Monday show. So look, we will arrange something there, and we will have a United show on Monday. So he sent his apologies because we did arrange to have him to come on. But look, that's absolutely fine, and we will do a Monday show, and we will look forward to our Europa League campaign in kind of further detail, and we will talk more kind of transfer news. Also, just to say, starting on Twitter next week, I will be doing lives. I will be doing transfer dailies, not only on Manchester United, but we will be covering all kind of bases in and around the English Premier League. Also coming up next week on the weekly armchair kickoff, we do have a combat sports podcast. So I do have ISK Muay Thai champion Dylan Maher coming on, and he's also Four Nations champion. So we will be discussing UFC Fight Island, among other fights coming up, like Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, and all other combat sports related topics. And also we will have an FA Cup final review next week, where hopefully the lads aren't too sour about what way the result goes. Look, I suppose they can slag us for not being in it, but look, we've had the more successful season out of both of them clubs, so I won't cry too much about that. But yeah, look, we've plenty of content to come next week, and as always, Callum, look, it's an absolute pleasure having you on. And look, your Scottish Premier League show, I just gave that a listen to. It was a very good listen, and I like the bit of diversity you have there at the Celtic and Rangers fans. It's very good.
Well, as you know, when it comes to Scottish football, Celtic and Rangers always dominate the chat. So to get the guys on from two of the main Celtic and Rangers podcasts to give that balance was key. And then joined by Morton legend Andy Ritchie to talk through the rest of the games, including the Celtic Rangers games, and predict the season. Andy's obviously, for me, a great co-host to have because he won the Player of the Year when he was playing in the Premier League in Scotland.
Yeah.
And he's also worked as a scout for Man City, Aston Villa and Celtic. So when it comes to spotting a player and when it comes to talking about the top flight of Scottish football, he's a good guy to have because, as we both know, when someone's been over that white line, it's great to get their insight.
Absolutely. It's great to have like professional insight in how to make it in the game. And like I suppose they'd spot little things that we wouldn't spot in a player or even in a performance, in terms of body language and stuff like that, So look, again, thanks very much for coming on, Callum. We will have all the content next week, and this will be released tomorrow after the FA Cup final. So look, hopefully I'm not too busy slagging Arsenal fans tomorrow, and we'll have it up in time after the match. Look, thanks everyone for watching. It will be available on Spotify and Google and Apple Podcasts also. And look, I hope you all have a good weekend. And look, we'll have a lot more content to come. Thanks very much for coming on.